IVM.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Fighting G.O.A.T. We are on episode number 31. Ladies and gentlemen, we have crossed the 30 barrier and we are now at 31. We have a lot to talk about in the week that was and a very, very special guest coming on. But before we do that, we're going to cut to a quick commercial break. We'll be right back after these messages.
Hey everybody, it's been a great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast, Aswin, DJ and Varun talk about Virat Kohli's shocking announcement about giving up the Indian T20 and RCB captaincy. And they review the opening match of the IPL between the Mumbai Indians and Chennai Super Kings. On Advertising is Dead, Varun is joined by musicians Hanita Bhambri and Kevin Fernando, along with Arjun Somesh from Spotify to talk about the shifts in the music space. The latest Cadbury ad remix sparks an interesting thought in Siddharth's mind. Is this a hack by advertisers to cut the clutter, or are they running out of content? Join the Simplified gang, Chuck, Naren, Shrikeet and Tony as they discuss why all platforms are trying to be like each other. And on Tere Mere Raste, Keshu takes us to a city known as the Rare Desert Oasis, Bikaner. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. It really does help us. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors on the network this week, Cred, Bank of Baroda, Quota, CoinSwitch, Kuber, and Intel vPro. Thank you so much for making this possible.
Welcome back to episode 31 of the Fighting G.O.A.T. You're talking to Arjun, aka Mystic Chips, and my partners Somesh, the Superhuman, Kamra. It's a throwback to the week that was UFC 266, some boxing, and of course, our lovely John Jones. Well, is kya bole yaar.
Well, you know what?
I know I love him, and I don't know how to defend him anymore.
Well, we have crossed 30 episodes. So are you feeling old already?
No, bro. I'm just getting started. I'm like a wine, dude. Wine. You just get better and better and better.
31, beta. 31 years हो गए हो.
31 शादी नहीं हुई तुम्हारी?
जिंदगी में क्या करोगे तुम? बच्चे हैं बच्चे?
नहीं चाहिए. बाहर देखता हूँ बच्चों को नहीं चाहिए.
Well, but speaking of episode 31, it is extremely exciting because we had a beautiful week. We had a great boxing fight between Anthony Joshua and Usyk. The belt changed hands, and obviously UFC 266, where the featherweight champion Alexander Volkanovski and Brian Ortega put up a massive show for us.
Mental freaking fight. And not to mention, in the co-main event, Valentina Bullet Shevchenko fired that bullet in the right direction and finished off Lauren Murphy. And it was something, when you compare the two performances, okay? You see the men's featherweight division. Look how stacked it is. What a fight that was. It was a war.
Yeah.
But that women's flyweight division, I mean, Valentina is like, it's like, sab log baki ke she's driving a Bentley and everybody is still on a Maruti 800s.
Correct. But you know what happens is there was a time where John Jones, you cleaned out the light heavyweight division. There was a time where Anderson Silva was cleaning out the middleweight division. So honestly, I don't blame them because
it's not her fault. She's just better than everybody.
The women started also very late. In fact, the women's divisions is just about expanding. When Valentina got in the sport, the flyweight division was not even there. It was just bantam and feather.
And boys, guys, we also have to talk about the fact that we had the rematch after 16 years between Nick Diaz and Robbie Lawler, which actually has, it was a great fight. We all knew what it was. Did it have title implications? No. Was it going to be, it was a great fight down memory lane.
It was undoubtedly.
And just like our guest who's coming on today, they are also one of the OG fighters. They are one of the guys who built this sport from the bottom.
We have the OG, literally the TUF1 contender, the guy who was unfortunately robbed of multiple fights, and the first Strikeforce champion, Bobby freaking hell Southworth, who's here with us, but that's on the
he's not here with us yet, so he's going to come on.
Yeah, he's probably going to come on in about 10 minutes. But
we're making him wait outside, actually.
Yeah, but speaking of 10 minutes, I mean, Dan Hooker finished off that fight in style. We couldn't see it on air,
man,
but it was it was a single-sided show. Visa issues came in late, no weight cutting time. He was like kind of drinking water on the aircraft so he doesn't kind of put on weight.
Correct.
When you're up there and you eat, like the processed food and
the
stuff
hydrating,
like
the hydrating.
Yes, the hydration matters a lot. And, but he came on, he put up a show. He in fact closed the show. He didn't open the show.
That just goes to show the kind of professional Dan Hooker is, man. I mean, he had issues, up and down, but damn, man, Dan Hooker is Dan Hooker. I can't wait for him to, get a little closer into that title picture because he put on a championship performance tonight.
Absolutely. And in fact,
a couple of days ago,
he has called out Beneil Dariush and he's like, listen, it's time that Beneil and me put up a show for the fans and let's just get this done.
Hang on. I want to see, I honestly want to see, now that RDA has pulled out against his fight against Islam Makhachev.
Yeah.
Would you rather see Dan Hooker versus Islam Makhachev or see Beneil Dariush versus Islam Makhachev?
Well, both those fights are extremely exciting. It just matters on who steps up and who actually tells Dana or Sean Shelby or Mick Maynard that, listen, I'm ready to give me this fight.
Hooker. I think it's going to be Dan Hooker who should step up because did he take a lot of damage in the last fight? I don't think so.
No, not really. It was a unanimous decision, like 30-27, and one of it was 30-26, which means it was a 10-8 round. Imagine how dominant that was.
I want to see. I would love to see Dan Hooker versus Islam, but it's again, it's not fair. It's just a month away. It's 30th October, and it's just so close.
Dan Hooker's too close to the fire to take this risk. I would still want him to wait out and see as to what works.
Same thing with Beneil, man. Beneil is on a hot streak. He just beat up Tony and is now taking some time off.
Right. But Beneil just may be in training. So I don't know where that will go. But what I do know will go is the women's flyweight opening fight of the night was Jessica Andrade, who put up a single-handed clinic versus Cynthia Cavallo. And it was a first round TKO, 4 minutes, 54 seconds. The referee thought he cannot wait for 6 seconds more because Cavallo was taking so much punishment.
No, it didn't make sense. You could see the difference.
Absolutely.
You could see the disparity in talent. And that's the thing with Andrade. She's always going to be number 2 in that division. She's so close to the belt. She's always in contention for the belt.
Right.
It's just, she's always right there. And nobody's beating her. Nobody's going to come up. Cynthia looked good on the feet, but it's just the minute Andrade just started landing, the game changed. The leg kicks to cut her off from circling from that power left. It's just the tactics she used, man.
It was just so beautiful. But sometimes, when you think of the champion and the number 1 contender, there is so much difference in skill.
There is too much
between the champion and the number 1 contender. It's actually a little sad. I just want more women to get into the sport and just get it exciting. It's just a matter
girls
of time.
like Clarissa Shields who's fighting at BFL.
My
God. They're coming, dude. They're coming.
She's a beast, and she's a Jackson Wink. So
one more year and she'll be in the UFC, guaranteed. A couple of more wins, she's here.
Holy moly. But what was not so holy moly for me, Chips, is Curtis Blades versus Rosenstrike. When you have a fight card with Nick Diaz, Robbie Lawler, you've got Shevchenko, Lauren Murphy, you've got Ortega, Volkanovski, and the way that event played out, are we just getting too used to seeing heavyweights knock each other out?
It's that, and it's also, the fact is that we have to take into consideration that both these guys were coming off a loss. So they both wanted to take it safe. We knew on paper, okay, it can either be a 10-second banger or it's going to go the distance.
Right.
And out of both those men, you saw Rosie try and bring the fight to him. He caught him with a great... Sorry, I'm calling him Rosie. Well, Jairzinho, if you're listening to this, please, sorry.
Well, Rosie's quite interesting, actually. Yeah?
I like Rosie, man. And the thing is that when the minute Rosenstruck landed that knee, when Blade shot in, the game plan just changed. Boom. And then Derek decided to, Curtis decided to take it easy. He decided to not take it easy. I'm sorry. He controlled the fight. He landed some ground and pound, but he was not... he himself admittedly said after the fight, saying, I should have been looking for the finish in the third.
Well, that's such a valid point that you make, because Curtis Blades in his previous fight went in for the takedown and Derek Lewis had that huge uppercut that landed flush and knocked him out cold.
Man,
Do you think something similar happened with Rosenstrike and he timed that knee well and it almost shut his right eye?
Absolutely. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Man, he shut his eye. And by the end of the fight, he couldn't see out of that eye.
Yes.
And it was almost that situation in Rocky where he's like, cut me, Mick, cut me. Like, the blade. He needed that. But the thing is, it was the same strategy because
are you saying that Blades needed the blade?
Nice pun, brother. Nice pun.
Like Curtis Blade, like cut me blades.
Cut me blades. Cut me now. Actually, if he could really start a shaving company called Curtis's Blades.
Ooh, very interesting.
Good idea.
Very interesting.
You should message him that.
Yeah,
Curtis's
but they only make blades. Yeah.
Correct. That's all they make. Curtis's blades. Blades for cutting anything.
Yeah.
Dude, that's the good one.
Well,
anyway, coming back, finishing what I was saying was
that's an absolute perfect business plan.
We'll talk about it later. I think maybe we can be partners in this. Kuch to kare, yaar.
Absolutely.
No, but Curtis Blades took, some people called it a boring fight, but you know what? If you get knocked out cold, you're going to come and try and take it easy because you don't want to make those mistakes again. And he got caught with that knee. So it was a kind of a wake-up call saying, that happened again.
It could happen again.
So he did what he had to do to finish the fight, and he walks away with the victory.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. As somebody who's there in the studio, who's kind of analyzing it, I think it was a good fight. Of course, not the most exciting fight, but both these guys needed the victory, and the smarter guy got the victory. So it is what it is.
I know. I hope you guys saw us in the studio because we were back after 6 months ourselves.
Yes.
And you will now see us again on the end of October for the next pay-per-view, and then in November for the next pay-per-view, and so on and so forth. So basically, just see us.
Well, speaking of just see us, the people who wanted to just see these two guys in the middleweight division, Robbie Lawler, take on Nick Diaz after 17 years.
Jesus, yeah.
How good was the promo? How good was the build-up? Yes, I do know the fight may have not lived up to the hype.
Mm-hmm. But a lot of people said that, Nick looked good for somebody who's not done anything for 6 years.
Well, 150 punches, 150 significant strikes, 100% accuracy.
Yeah, I mean, it shows because Nick's boxing was always good. Nick always had great hands. And is that people should cut him some slack, man. He's come back after 6 freaking years. And
Absolutely.
Robbie's been fighting all these years. Robbie was champion till 5 years ago.
Absolutely. And in fact, this is a guy who, was coaching kids and stuff. So it's not like he took 6 years off and he was still training
but there's fight
in
shape,
rehab.
There's fight shape and then there's then there's
Absolutely.
training shape.
Absolutely.
Because he looks in shape, but maybe was not in... Because I saw moments of him maybe looking like he was tired. And the way Robbie caught him with that check hook, with the right check hook, and then that uppercut which broke his nose.
Right.
I think it was Nick being more, tired than hurt. Because he didn't. His eyes were clear, dude. It's Nick Diaz.
They're not going to quit. No ways. 209.
They never quit, man. They never quit.
But the positive part of this entire thing is that 17 years back, Nick Diaz had knocked out Robbie Lawler in round 2. 17 years later, fast forwarding 2021, Robbie Lawler knocked out Nick Diaz in round number 3. So do you think by any chance we have a trilogy fight?
Well, you know what? No matter
sometime.
Dude, no, come on. We're OG old school fans.
UFC 300 maybe?
I don't care when it happens. It needs to happen. I don't mind seeing Chuck versus Tito 30. I can see that happen over and over again. I mean, I'm pretty sure. Okay, hang on. I'm going to ask you a tough question now. Would you rather see Nate versus Robbie 30 or Sugar Sean O'Malley fighting for the belt?
Oh, well.
Okay, fine. That's a bad question to ask you. I'm sorry, man. Well, we forgot to mention that in the news today because that might be happening. I was keeping it for a surprise for you.
Oh God, you're breaking my heart.
Aljo's out of the fight. Aljamain Sterling is out of the fight against Peter Yan. Peter Yan is very, very upset about it. He went to Twitter and blasted him all over Twitter saying, I'm blocking you till you, probably grow a pair and come fight me. And Somesh loved that. And so because we've all been waiting for this rematch and it's so sad that that happened. But who's the next contender, man? Is it going to be Sandhagen? Is it going to be TJ is out for surgery? And then there is one of the most highly touted prospects in the UFC, Sugar Sean O'Malley.
Well, I personally, I in fact went back and I saw the rankings. So there is Rob Font who's out there. There is Cody.
Rob Font's fighting Aldo.
Oh yes, Rob Font as in rank number 4 is fighting rank number 5. So that's that's a great matchup. And after that comes straight Cody Garbrandt. So I don't know where this goes.
But Cody lost his last fight as well, right?
Yeah.
Cody lost his last fight. TJ is in surgery. Sandhagen lost his last fight.
Right.
But that was still a very close decision. So that's
right.
It's right there.
But the latest tweet from Sugar Sean O'Malley is that he has called out Dominic Cruz and he said, "What's up, Dom?
What?
Shall we dance?" So lots.
Why is he calling out? Why is he calling out the former champ? I mean, why is he calling him out Dom? I wish Dom would have fought Sugar Sean 6 years ago.
Well, that would have,
today.
That would have made Sugar Sean like 12 years of age.
I know.
Well, but speaking of 12 years of age, somebody who's been practicing martial arts since 28 years, the women's flyweight champion Valentina Shevchenko took on a very, very strong contender, Lauren Murphy. Nobody had given Lauren Murphy a chance to even stand, but man, she hung in for 4 rounds with an absolute assassin.
Yeah, actually, Richard, before we start saying, that Valentina is this and that. Firstly, Lauren Murphy had her wits about her. People have to understand, when you step into the ring and you saw this with Valentina, you see this with great fighters, you see this with Silva, you saw this with the GSP, we see it against the greatest fighters in the world like Jones and Adesanya. You saw Lauren Murphy, the minute she got hit by one of Valentina's body kicks, you saw Lauren Murphy just kind of freeze.
Yes.
For 2 rounds, 2.5 rounds, she was a standing target. She just kept getting tagged over and over and over again by the champ. And the champ there are performances and there are performances. And she didn't get one scratch on her. She took her down at will. She landed almost everything and ended up knocking her out, finishing the fight.
Yes.
But the punishment that Lauren was able to take proves that she belongs there. She's a top contender.
Tough. She is so tough. She is so tough. I mean,
tough.
I was so happy. So in fact, the first round,
and she will learn from this, Somesh. She will learn so much from this.
Exactly. I was in fact coming to that because there was this check right hook that Valentina was landing over and over again, which is the one that actually didn't put Lauren to sleep, but really shook her up. So towards the end, like in round 4, it was that that over and over again, just on the ear when you get that.
Exactly, she got smacked right on the ear.
It kind of
equilibrium.
Exactly, it kind of disbalances you.
But that left kick which caught her on the face, boom,
was god,
that was bad. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, we have concluded that Valentina is a secret agent. We just know it. Nobody speaks. Her victory speech was in some 18 languages,
and plus she has a dance that says "Yes, it's done."
Yeah. She has that. She has that signature dance, and she's so unassuming. Once the fight's over, she's all smiley and happy and speaks. She's up. There's something there.
Well, what you said was absolutely spot on. That she's smiley and stuff. But do you remember that time when she knocked her out?
Oh my God!
Where she knocked Lauren Murphy out, and she was
scary.
She was standing over her with her hands up, and there was
she looking at her eyes and looking at her face.
It was like how that crocodile in Khoonbari Mang was seeing Rekha.
Like Bollywood fans.
Absolutely. Looking at that and saying, oh man, it was
that look, man. That look like, you see that in all the great champions. You see that in Jones' eyes. You see that in Silva's eyes.
Yes.
You see that in Silva's eyes, where you just, it's calm, but it's scary calm.
It's cold,
Yeah, you saw that in Fedor Emelianenko's eyes. Like you didn't look at his eyes because you were too scared to look at his eyes.
Yes.
But when you did, even Mirko Krokop, when Krokop just hit you, he would just stand blankly.
Oh man.
Blank
really.
Expression. Like,
it was so scary.
How dare you stand in the same ring as me?
That there's a photo of that, I think, released by the UFC, and when I saw it, I was like, oh my God, I would rather fake the knockout and just lie down and say, listen, I'm done, than to actually be there with her. It was unreal.
Valentina, jeez, no chance. I'm not stepping into that, whatever. She'll kick everybody's ass.
Unreal, mad power, crazy skills. I just don't know who is next for Valentina.
No, I mean, and honestly, we've discussed that to death. It is going to be who it's going to be. I think it should be Triple C versus Valentina.
Well, I thought you were going to say Amanda Nunes, and I was going to say yes, absolutely. But Triple C, here's a huge call
He's
out.
looking to fight, dude.
You know, matchmaker Arjun Chipalkatti is putting Triple C versus Valentina Shevchenko.
Wait, dude, hang on. Triple C came back into the picture wanting to fight Volkanovski now.
Well, you know, sometimes
it's going to be no. Hang on, Triple C was not even a big flyweight. I mean, forget him moving up to featherweight with the monsters.
Yes.
I mean, bantamweight has guys like Sandhagen who look like they belong in welterweight.
Absolutely. So, in fact, what we're talking about is a Triple C Henry Cejudo who fights in the 125-pound category has called out Alexander Volkanovski in 145 pounds.
You know, people think it might not be a lot, but you have to understand on fight night, you're not exactly 145. On fight night, you're easily 160.
Easily.
165. You think Volkanovski may have cut for the weigh-in, but on fight night, he's easy 160.
Absolutely. And speaking of easy 160, we have the featherweight title fight of UFC 266, which was the champion,
yes, sir.
Then the New Zealand, Australia native Alexander Volkanovski that took on a very charged up yet calm Brian Ortega. And we all thought that, man, looking at the UFC embedded episodes, Ortega's hands were looking like magic. But in fight night, man, it changed completely.
But no, hang on. I don't agree. I mean, look, he had his moments because in the first two rounds, they both cut each other. They both landed great jabs.
Right.
They both had control. The difference is Volkanovski took over. And that third round, the amount of submission attempts, he almost had him in that guillotine. Almost.
Well, he had him in the guillotine. He tried for the Das. He tried for a triangle. And Volkanovski got out of all of them.
Man, Volkanovski is a jiu-jitsu coach. Props, man. Whoever.
Hats off. And for the first time, you know, honestly, for the first time, I saw a very, very different scorecard. It was 49-46.
No, 50-45. And
yeah, so it was, you know, it was 49-46. It was 50-45 and 50-44.
Yeah, I think one round where he couldn't answer the bell properly, where he was maybe telling Jobdeen, like, just let me lie down here for 10 seconds and I would get up and, you know, get back to my school.
Absolutely. So that could have been the difference. You're absolutely right.
I think that could have been the difference, or it could have just been the overwhelming attack.
You know, but man, so many good championship fights coming up. So many good. Alexander Volkanovski retains the belt. Valentina Shevchenko retains the belt. And I think after a very long time, I have won out here in our prediction game.
You won by a technicality. And you won by fluke. And it was, but it's okay. You won now twice versus me some 3,530,000 times. So,
well, that's true.
बेटा ये गेम खेलना है तो फिर हम वापस चालू
करेंगे. I'm just giving small mentions, but speaking of mentions, we're going to be taking a short break because our guest has logged on. We're going to be speaking to none other than the OG of TUF1, Bobby Southworth, on the other side. We'll see you right back after these short messages.
Season 3 of Echoes of India, your favorite history podcast, is back on the IVM Podcast Network. I'm your host, Anirudh Kanasetti. Join me on a journey through the wonders of early India as we explore the centuries between Buddha and Ashoka with critical research, empathy, and great storytelling. Along the way, you'll hear from all the vibrant peoples who shaped our world, from monks and farmers to warriors and emperors. New episodes are out every Monday.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 31 of The Fighting G.O.A.T. This is Arjun Chipalkatti, aka The Mystic Chips, with my main man, Somesh Superhuman Kamra. But before we get to everything else, we've got a very, 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 very special guest here tonight. Former Pride, Strikeforce, and UFC contender, a real veteran of the sport, the one and only Bobby Southworth.
Welcome to the show, Bobby.
Hello, thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for being here, Bobby. How's it going? You look great. I don't know how old you are. I think according to Wikipedia, you're about 53. But for some reason, you look younger than me.
No. I'll be 52 in December. But you can edit that part out. Well, thank you. I don't feel young. But that's all right.
No, man, I stopped feeling young after 35.
I hear you.
It sucks.
How about you? How are you and Somesh doing? You guys doing good?
We're doing good. Thank you so much.
Well, we are awesome. In fact, it is such a pleasure to have a veteran of the sport, someone who we call the OG from the Just Bleed era, Bobby Southworth, right here with us. We've, in fact, not had a person from that era as yet. So honestly, we are very, very kicked about it. And all the fans in India are extremely, extremely happy to have the first Strikeforce champion with us. And obviously, TUF1 veteran contender, Bobby Southworth. Awesome. Thank you so much for removing time and being with us on the show.
Well, it's a pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity. I didn't realize that MMA was so big in India. Is it big or is it still like a growing sport?
Dude, no, it is huge. MMA has exploded since the last. I would give it maybe the last 8 years. Regionally, it exploded in a very big way around 2013, and nice. Then once the local sports channel, which is Sony, where we do another show for the UFC, when they started giving out a partnership for the pay-per-views. So when people didn't have to spend money, all they had to do was subscribe to the channel. It became really big. And then we used to go, Somesh and I used to watch Strikeforce on, on different streams. And of course, I still have the best of Pride downloaded. Yes, I'm not saying this on. But we had to.
Okay.
We're going to do it.
Strikeforce doesn't exist anymore. I don't think anybody's coming after you, so it's all good.
No, man, you never know, dude. Dana's having a bit of a bad week.
Okay. I don't follow I just watch the fights. I don't really follow so much the behind the scenes drama of the business or the fighters' personal lives and things like that. But that's awesome. I knew that MMA was growing internationally. And I believe my coach, Javier, he had posted on his Instagram, there was a Indian heavyweight.
Yes.
I think he's from
Arjun
India.
Arjun Balar is a Indian-Canadian heavyweight. He's the champ of ONE FC.
Okay. That's right. It was ONE FC. That was going to be my next question. I wasn't sure which organization he was fighting in. Are there any native Indian fighters or Indian nationals that are fighting in the UFC currently?
Just one at the moment. Bharat Khandare is contracted with the UFC, the first Indian to fight in the UFC.
What was the name again?
Bharat Khandare. Bharat.
Has he fought already? Or maybe I didn't see him fight, or
he fought in 2017.
Okay, it's hard for me to remember. I apologize. I've been doing this a long time, fighting and
man.
I mean, honestly, I originally started. I was just like you guys. I was just a fan of the sport, and I saw the first UFC. I'd always been interested in martial arts, but I was really never able to do it when I was younger because my parents, they're like pacifists. Like it was a big deal to get them to let me to play like football and competitive sports.
Right.
But so when I was about 24, one of my friends from high school showed me the first two UFCs on videotape, and he had been going down to LA to train with the Gracies. And he told me he was bringing this is back in 1994, and he was bringing a Brazilian guy up to teach. And the guy was just a purple belt, but that was like a huge deal back then.
Right.
It was a huge deal. And so I took my first class. I had been a college basketball player. I was a basketball player all my life. I took my first class and I never really looked back. But before that, I was just a fan of it was actually the first two UFCs. I started jiu-jitsu maybe 2 or 3 months before UFC 3 came out. And, I don't want to say the rest is history, but that's just kind of like how I started. So
wow. In fact, that's so inspirational because, like all of us, we started off in India maybe in about 2001, 2002 when Pride used to come on TV.
Oh, yes.
And that's when people in India, who technically wanted to move away from WWF and to focus on something more real, that is when people like Arjun and me actually got hooked onto the sport. And, when we had those Wanderlei Silvas and we, had Quinton Rampage Jackson, we had Anderson Silva who used to also fight there. So it was really the start of MMA in India. But speaking of speaking of the start of MMA in India, Bobby, my first question to you is obviously you fought Vitor Belfort in his prime on 2 weeks' notice.
Yeah.
How did that exactly feel? It's like calling me to face.
Yeah, I was just going to say, man. I was just going to say, it must be horrifying.
It was terrifying. I mean,
what made you say yes and you actually went out there and competed against the Phenom on 2 weeks' notice in your first big MMA matchup?
So that's a really good question. My coach, Javier Mendez, he was against me taking the fight. Okay. But like I told you, it's totally different now. You see, like last weekend, you're seeing these kids they're like 22 years old and they already have some of these kids from China. They've been fighting professionally since they were 17 years old and from different countries. Some from the US, but these kids, they're seasoned pros, they're jiu-jitsu black belts, and they're like 22 years old, 15 fights, world champions, level grapplers. I didn't take my first jiu-jitsu class till I was like 25 years old. So,
wow.
And when I was always a boxing fan and I was always into martial arts, I would watch boxing whenever I would go stay with my father because obviously my mom, mother, and stepfather, they were pacifists and they didn't like me watching combat sports and kung fu movies, action stuff. They thought it would make me more violent.
Yeah.
Anyways,
like son, go to church on Sundays.
Yes, kind of like that.
I wasn't allowed to play video games, so come on.
But watching boxing and my father, we were watching boxing and you would see some of the older pros like Muhammad Ali and you would see some of their physical condition. And so even when I got into martial arts, I didn't know that I wanted to be a fighter at first. I just took jiu-jitsu because I saw Royce Gracie beating all these bigger guys. And I know I'm a bigger guy now, but back then when I was a basketball player, I was only like 175 or 180 pounds. And when you're playing in the parks in America, a lot of the times you're playing with big guys and they don't like it when you dunk on them or when you're schooling them on the courts. And so there are opportunities to fight. And so I was looking for a way to, defeating bigger opponents. But I was also a surfer. I grew up in Santa Cruz, California. It's like maybe 40, 50 miles down the coast from this break called Mavericks, which is one of the biggest waves in the world. So we have a saying there. It's called go big or go home. And so knowing that the consequences of fighting and getting started late, I realized that I didn't have a lot of time in the sport. Right. And so when the question you had asked was why about fighting Vitor. And so when the opportunity came up to fight Vitor, at that time, Pride was the big organization, right? Yeah. UFC was big in America, but Pride was big internationally. I actually was already contracted to fight. I think the fight was in February. I'd gotten offered to fight in the UFC in June.
Oh, really?
Okay? Oh. And I was supposed to fight Phil Baroni. But the opportunity came.
Wow. Man, Phil Baroni? That's like, I love the New York badass.
Yeah, he's a great guy. He actually came out. He might not even know this because this was just through my manager and through the Pride people. Anyways, the opportunity to fight in Pride, and just like you guys, I was a huge fan of Pride. Like most of the guys who were Quentin wasn't fighting in Pride yet, but you had like Vanderlei, you had Vitor, you had Sakuraba, you had Igor Vovchanchyn, and coincidentally, Mark Coleman. Fedor. But all those guys that I mentioned, they all fought in that card. Yeah, all but Shogun wasn't in Pride yet. So when I fought in Pride and on the same card, it was me and Vitor, but like Mark Coleman was fighting, Igor Vovchanchyn was fighting, Vanderlei Sakuraba. That's when Vanderlei knocked out Sakuraba. Jesus. I was just sitting, Heath Herring fought on that card. I was just sitting there. Herring, man. Yeah, and I was just sitting there, and it was like my friend and manager, Crazy Bob, was like, look, your name's up there with all the big boys. And I looked up on the thing, and it was like all the top names in the sport, at least the top names in Pride. Yeah, it was insane, but it was also overwhelming.
It is. Right? And so that's a funny thing. I was going to segue off that point. Somesh and I have we've spoken to a lot of fighters, and they have one thing in common that they always say, you don't really understand how big it is till you get there. It doesn't matter if you're Anderson Silva or GSP, you're still going to be sweating bullets. I remember when I was actually.
Go ahead.
Sorry, no, I barely fought. I did some small, boxing and stuff, and I was scared. And there's no shame in that. You can be the best, and you can have nerves, anywhere. And that's the thing. It's your career kind of exploded after that first Pride fight, because you went on to star in probably the most life-changing reality show that ever existed in this sport. And the Ultimate Fighter season 1.
In any sport.
In any sport.
Absolutely.
There had never been a reality show of that nature. And, it was a gamble that the Fertittas and Dana pulled off. And the thing is that it's so funny. And I didn't realize till some time ago that you came so close to being in that finale of the Ultimate Fighter. And you were a replacement for Forrest Griffin had his cut not healed. And it was.
I should have been there anyways because I got robbed in the Stephan Bonner fight.
It was just
no one's ever going to convince me.
How pissed off were you that you lost that split decision to Bonner?
I was upset. There's you've touched on a few topics. Hopefully, we'll get to be able to touch on those later, like the overwhelmingness of being in the big shows, the fear, those type of things. But I was mad at losing. It wasn't necessarily that I lost to Stephan, but more to add insult to injury is that I didn't understand how, if I hadn't won the fight outright, how we didn't get to go to a third round. And when Chuck and I asked to see the scorecards, and they would not show us the scorecards. Oh, so I think there was a little bit of a reality thing going on. That's all. Maybe I'm just a conspiracy guy, but there was the whole debacle with Chris Lieben, and then him and Josh fought, and really they wanted to kick us all off the show. But they came to a decision where they wanted to have somebody from each team leave that was involved in that incident. And I think when Koscheck ended up beating Chris, I think they were kind of hoping that Stephan was going to beat me. And I think they were just able to tweak it enough. That's just what I think. I'm not upset about it. Honestly,
things happen for reality shows. People, it's still a show at the end of the day.
Definitely. And a lot of people, I don't think they realize that. It's like I get trolled on the internet so much just about the one incident with Chris Lieben, of which I definitely had involvement in that. But like really all I did was call him a bad name. And for the rest of the things, I was kind of just standing there. I wasn't the one who put the water on him. It was my idea. That was the prank, but the idea wasn't to put the water on him. There was a whole different idea behind the prank.
Yeah.
But I think, and I've said this before, is like it probably worked out maybe not the best for me, but the best for the sport, right? Because if I had gone to the final, maybe that fight with Stephan, the show itself was huge. It garnered millions of viewers, but while during that fight, if you look at, you can go back and it's public record, the metrics of the way that fight, there was 5 million viewers, and then that fight or whatever, when that fight started, and by the end of the show, there were like 30 something million viewers, or it just grew exponentially. And maybe that fight wouldn't have happened, and maybe it wouldn't have done as much for this, me fighting Forrest wouldn't have done as much for the sport. So it didn't work out as well for me, but I can't hate on Forrest or Stephan or any of the other guys that went on to have good careers and be successful in the sport. I'm happy for those guys. I'm happy for the UFC. I'm happy for Dana. Dana has never been anything but he's never been anything but nice to me.
That's such an incredible attitude, though. It's incredible. It's incredible to hear that. No, that was not the point of my question. It was meant to ask you. It's still, you still were a part of history. That entire season, anyone who came in and out of that season, is memorable. The fact that you still get trolled on the internet, you know what I mean? It still happens.
Yeah.
People still remember it. I was the generation that watched The Ultimate Fighter 1. And it was something else. And you compared to
it wasn't the ultimate. It was the Ultimate Fighter. It wasn't one. It was the Ultimate Fighter.
Exactly. You've never seen a season like that ever again.
Never.
Ever again. The animosity was real. The fights were real. Yep. The drama wasn't scripted. It was just It just came out, and people went batshit crazy, and we saw that. And that's the thing yes, being on the big show, you can walk out and be in front of 300,000 fans, but you're doing that on television as well. So it's a different kind of pressure.
And a lot of people, they really don't understand what it was like to be on the show. And it was different. I was the oldest. I was the second oldest guy, but I was the oldest guy to continue on the show, right? I'm the only cast member besides the finalists, the 4 finalists, who was in every single episode of the show.
Yeah.
But nobody really understands what it's like being on a reality show. Not only that, it was the first reality show that the UFC and that I think Pilgrim Films had done of that nature. And people don't understand what it's like to be sequestered. Like, there was no television, there was no books, there was no music, there was the things that you take for granted in your regular life.
Yeah.
And Dana said it too. It's like, all you have to do is eat and train and fight. And yeah, that's great. But the simple things like, I want to go to the store and get a candy bar. It's like, but you can't do that because you're basically locked up. And for some of the guys, the younger guys, you know, most of those guys were under 25. In fact, most of those guys had retired, besides Diego, had finished or retired from the sport before they were the age I was on the show. True. So I was already a father of two. You know, so it was different. It was hard for me to deal with a bunch of kids running my life. You know what I mean? Because there, you know, and then a lot of people don't understand that. Like, they're telling you, be here at this time, and you show up at that time. One of the producers is telling you, be here at this time, and then you're there. And another producer comes in and is like talking to you like you're, you know, like you're an unintelligent little kid. What are you doing here? You guys aren't supposed to be. You know, it was just, there was a lot of disrespect, you know, and what you see on the show, there was a lot of editing. So some of the stuff was edited out of context. Like, I won't say I didn't have interest in incidents where I was a jerk, but a lot of people look at the show and they think that I was a jerk for the whole show. And that's just not true.
That's just reality, man. Reality does that.
And they think other guys are these paragons of moral virtue. And just because their scenes where they had incidences, like you said, went batshit crazy or broke down a little bit, those were edited out to make the better storyline. And, you know, look, that's, like you said, it's a good attitude to take. Looking back, I mean, what other attitude would there be for me to take? Otherwise, I would just be this sad, bitter person. You know what I mean? And I look at the sport and I look at, you know, what the UFC has done. And even if I was a little sliver as wide as my fingernail part of that, that's literally more than 6 billion other people can say, you know, to be a part of help building the biggest sport, the greatest sport on the planet. Exactly. You know what I mean?
And you were a part of greatness, and greatness, no matter how brief, stays with someone.
Exactly. And I was happy with my career. You know, again, most people don't realize I was just a fan. I was just a guy like you guys who like watching MMA, and I took my first jiu-jitsu class, and I had an aptitude because I'd been an athlete. I did my first competition. You know, I did well in that, and people were asking me if I ever considered fighting. And going back to that, go big or go home. It's like, as a surfer, you're always looking for that next perfect ride or that next big wave. And it's like, so I was always willing to step up to the next thing. And even today, there are thousands of high-level jiu-jitsu guys or grapplers, wrestlers, or whatever that, I mean, not to disrespect them, but they don't have the balls to go into MMA because, I mean, it's a smart decision, right? Fighting's not an easy life if you can make a living doing coaching and teaching and doing those things. But again, that was just in me. I wanted to do that. And I don't care what type of martial artist you are. You can't tell me that you don't watch the fights and think about if you could do that. And you know what I mean? Who? That's why fighting's popular. Who doesn't watch the UFC and in the back of their mind?
Hang on. I'm sorry. I look at Anderson Silva fight and I'm pretty honest. I say I can't do that. No.
Yes, you can't. You say that you can't be Anderson Silva, but I'm sure in the back of your mind something says, I wish I could be in the cage, right?
Oh, I wish I could be in the cage, get my ass kicked by him. Yes, sure. True, very true. I wish. Yes. At least I can stand out and say, damn, I got my ass kicked.
He kicked my ass. He kicked my ass too. So, you know, there's no shame in that. So, but yeah, you know, I can't be bitter. I can't be bitter about it. So.
Well, such interesting incidents. But, you know, we spoke about stepping up. We spoke about having the balls. We spoke about all these things. Most people don't even know, Bobby, you actually stepped into AKA when AKA didn't even have a wrestling or a BJJ class.
That's right.
And you stepped up to the occasion and you started the BJJ class at AKA with Javier Mendez.
Wow.
And today, we can proudly say that AKA has developed some of the best wrestlers and BJJ guys in the world. You know, so we can talk
and fighters.
You know, we can talk about DC. We can talk about Cain Velasquez. We can talk about Khabib. We can talk about Luke Rockhold. Do you think at some level you laid the seed and we're seeing the greatness of those fighters in today's generation?
I think, you know, when I came to AKA, I was training jiu-jitsu with Ralph and Cesar Gracie for a number of years, and I was teaching for them, and there was a falling out, and I'd already decided that I wanted to try fighting, and so a friend had suggested for me to go to AKA because the guy named Brian Johnston, if you watch the early UFCs, a guy named Brian Johnston fought in the early UFCs. His name was Brian the Fury Johnston. So I went. So a friend suggested I go there because I was good at grappling, at jiu-jitsu, and we knew, again, at this time, Vitor Belfort had just come on the scene. Maurice Smith, fighting in a different promotion called Battlecade, had beat some of the first jiu-jitsu black belts, with counter grappling and good striking. And so it was obvious the game was evolving. And so we knew that I needed striking. And so going there, and that's how kind of it all started, is I went there, and when I was walking in to meet Javier Mendez, Frank Shamrock was walking out, and he had just literally 2 nights before knocked out Enson Inoue to win the King of Pancrase title.
Yes,
and he had just signed to fight for the UFC title. So I walked in, I talked to Javier. He asked me to, Brian had a submission fighting team there, but they didn't have a jiu-jitsu program. I ran down my background. He asked me to roll with the guys. I kind of tapped out everybody. I wasn't being mean about it. It was just, they didn't know jiu-jitsu. And
what are you going to do? You know your stuff. You're going to show them.
Yeah.
I don't hate on everybody who choked me out because,
Right, exactly. And it wasn't, and that was one of the things that cemented me there, is that my attitude and Brian liking me, because a lot of people Brian didn't like, and him and Javier were close. And Brian told Javier, I like this guy. And that's when Javier said, look, I know you want to fight. If you'll run a jiu-jitsu program here for me, I'll teach you striking, and we'll get you ready for MMA, and that's really how it all started, until I used to teach BJ Penn jiu-jitsu. I was really the first person to formally teach BJ Penn. Yeah, when he was 16, he came over from Hawaii, and he came to Ralph Gracie's. Mm-hmm. It's in his book. He has a book out. There's some mentions to it in his book.
Because BJ Penn is one of the greatest grapplers I've ever seen. I mean, BJ Penn he was one of the first to win the ADCC championships in less than 3 years?
No, IBJJF, not ADCC. He's the first American. That's okay. He's the first American to ever win at black belt.
Okay.
And again,
you're absolutely right. I just checked it out. Sorry, my mistake, sir.
BJ came in. He came to Ralph Gracie Mountain View, and at that time, Ralph Gracie's in Mountain View was one of probably the top, if not the top, jiu-jitsu schools in Northern California. And BJ came in, and he was he didn't know anything, but he was just a natural fighter.
Right.
Right. He just was watching the fights and trying to do those moves and watching some tapes. And, I was lucky enough to teach him the basics. It's not I can't say that I made him great. He was you could tell that he was special and that he was going to be great. The same with Luke Rockhold.
There's a reason why he's BJ Penn. I mean, he just naturally had those abilities. He had those skills.
But that's what actually laid the foundation for the AKA fight team, is when I was getting ready, just before I was getting ready to fight Vitor, BJ had just won the world championships, and he was getting ready to make his, transition into MMA. And I was like, dude, you need to learn striking, and this is the place to do it. Why don't you come over here? So he came over with his brothers and a guy named Tony D'Souza, if you remember him. He's the guy who invented the Peruvian necktie. Several UFC fights. And really, that's what really laid the foundation for the AKA fight team, is Javier, BJ Penn, and I. At that time, Frank Shamrock still had a submission fighting group there, but Crazy Bob and Frank were kind of their own crew.
Right.
But when we started doing our training, and we were kind of smashing pretty much everybody else, is some of those guys started training with us. And so we merged everything up, and that's what the AKA fight team.
So that's when Bob Cook and everybody came together.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Man, it's crazy.
Bob and Javier were friends already. They were already friends.
Oh.
But that's when Bob started managing fighters, and Frank that's when Frank he wanted to become a Hollywood actor. And so he kind of phased himself out of the picture and left Bob. And that's when everything kind of merged up. And that's what was the foundation.
Hang on. You said Frank Shamrock became a Hollywood actor. Hang on. Have you seen him in anything? Did he do any major movies?
Well, I said he wanted to be a Hollywood actor. I didn't say he became one.
We're going to get Frank on the show one of these days, and we're going to get Bobby back, and then both of us, we can all have a big call. We can have a big conversation.
He was on a couple episodes of Walker, Texas Ranger.
I remember Walker, Texas Ranger.
Yeah, he tried to make it work, but I'm not saying I would have fared any better if I dipped my foot into acting, but Randy Couture is a better actor than Frank Shamrock.
Oh man! Hang on. This is the bar. This is the bar. There's Rampage Jackson in The King of Queens as a cameo, or Randy Couture in The Expendables. Where does he lie in the middle?
Frank, if this is Randy and this is Quentin,
Rampage. Yeah.
Frank is like no. He's not that bad. I don't think he took. Those guys.
I love this.
Those guys, Quentin and Randy took classes. They took the right step. For their career. I think Frank just. He's a very confident guy. He thought he could do it, and he just went in there.
Yeah, he's good looking. He's confident.
Yeah, and I just don't think. I don't think it was for him, or I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was an awesome conversation with the OG of the MMA world, Bobby Southworth. I hope you guys had lots and lots and lots of fun. If you want to write to us or Bobby, please give us your views, your reviews, and we would be happy to address them. We'd be happy to speak to you. And Bobby is looking to come back on our show with a lot more masala. So till then, take care of yourselves, stay safe. We'll see you right back, same time, same place, only on the Fighting G.O.A.T.
Have you ever wondered where the business world is headed? How the ways in which we create, market and sell to consumers will evolve? Or if we'll ever go back to wearing pants while working? For answers to all of this and more, tune into Advertising is Dead with me, Varun Dugirala. Every Tuesday, as I talk to entrepreneurs, leaders and change makers from across business, media, marketing and beyond. You can catch all episodes of Advertising is Dead on the IVM Podcast website, app or wherever you get your podcast from.
A wise man once said, traveling, it makes you speechless, then turns you into a storyteller.
Well, listen to such travel stories and experiences exploring India on the Musafir Stories with us, Saif and Faiza.
Catch us on the IVM website, app, or wherever you get your podcasts from.